you make it out, essentially you try to be that beacon. You try to be an example that people can look to, and hopefully it affects other people.
Because if you have a society where those in power abuse those underneath them, then we're all effed. If you don't have justice, you don't have anything. Justice being the highest value, like is justice someone's highest value? It's a value, but is it a value above peace? Is it a value above getting along? Is it a value above raising our kids in a harmonious home? Right? Like, what is this never-ending fight for justice? Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side.
We're back.
Justice. Let's fight for justice. I definitely used to have it. I'm not sure if it's still as prominent as it once was, where some ways you could say fighting for the underdog or fighting for what's right, and this never-ending, it seems like an endless energy to repair what's broken or to find what was lost. You know what I'm about? So I see it often in people, and it's presented, it was for me, I presented it as a positive thing. I'm fighting for the underdog, or fixing what's broken, finding what's lost, whatever it is, right? This fight, and it felt like boundless energy. I'm going to correct this wrong. The truth is going to come out, and you will know this fight for justice, for what is right. And now that I'm seeing it in others, and I'm seeing that as some of you are working on something, you're not working on everything. You're working on one thing,
Right.
But several things change at the same time. I never walked in and said, hey, this fight for justice that I have inside me is consuming me. Let me have a therapist help me. Some of the other work I was doing where some stuff relaxed, and I'm like, hey, I'm not quite, I don't have this endless energy to right every wrong anymore.
What's changed?
So what I want to argue, I guess, in this discussion is that fight for justice is like a traumatic response. It feels holy and it feels just, and we got to make it right, and the truth has to come out, but it's a traumatic response of sorts.
Unpack that for me, meaning where it's stemming from the fight, like the origin
energy.
of the fight is
the origin of the energy. Yeah.
The origin of the energy.
Yeah.
Is usually traumatic.
It's a traumatic response. I'm thinking of, every once in a while I've gotten into a couple of in between disputes and trying to settle between different parties. I'm thinking of one where I was talking to someone who was like, but they're wrong, and what they did was wrong. And like, you can stay on this for 10 years. You recognize that. You'll lose your life.
Right.
The best 10 years of your life, or whatever that means, right? It really,
Right. Getting caught up in that.
Getting caught up in that and fighting that till the end. And just seeing that today as actually a trauma response. And the reason I'm saying that is because when I hear people describe themselves doing it, you don't hear it in the same way you'd hear someone say, I'm drinking alcohol as a way to cope with my childhood trauma.
Right.
It kind of goes more in the category of overworking. It's like, yeah, I'm working my ass off, and it was like, high five, you're doing amazing. So these fights for justice, I'm not talking about wanting what's right. We don't want that, but there was this thing I had inside me. It was like never-ending energy towards this, and I was willing to sacrifice so much in order for the wrong to be right. Versus today, what feels like, I'm going to put in that energy, I'm going to see if I can get it done. And if not, it's not the time, and there are other things that are more important than fight for justice. Let me say it differently. Justice being the highest value, like, is justice someone's highest value? It's a value,
Right.
But is it a value above peace? Is it a value above getting along? Is it a value above raising our kids in a harmonious home? Right? Like, what is this never-ending fight for justice?
Right.
Is consuming.
And recognizing that it's a trauma response. Now it's like knowing when to quit, essentially.
Yeah, Well, once we
And
recognize
quit doesn't mean you've lost. Just
that, right? That's the
not fall
association.
into this fire of like.
That's the association. Like sometimes the way it used to manifest. If I was in a disagreement with someone, I needed to win because I was right and they were wrong. And sometimes I can see it that I won. It's fine. Like I won. Okay, so if on this one someone gets one for me, that's fine. I still won. I'm doing good. It's like, no, we got to, like, the truth has to be known. Must be.
Right.
It must be clear. We have to keep going at it and keep going at it and keep going at it for what? For what? Towards what? The reason why I'm saying it is because when people articulate it, they articulate it as a virtue. You know, I'm in the office till midnight. I'm busting my tail.
Right.
That's not a virtue. There's something going on. There's something going on. Why? Why? Okay, you're at the beginning of your career and you're setting up certain things for your future. Okay, that's good. You're 40 years in and you're still working like that. Why? What are you distracting yourself from? Right. So kind of the same thing. A fight for justice for what?
For what?
Or what? The truth has to come out. That they're wrong, and it's not okay that, and
just going back to what you're saying a bit when you said whenever you would get into that pursuit of justice, it's like they're wrong, you're right. What happens if it's the reverse? Like, meaning like, is that kind of where you always started from when you were pursuing justice, that you're in the right?
It certainly was what it felt like. Sometimes it had nothing to do with me, the pursuit of justice. It wasn't my situation that I was fighting. It was someone else's. There was an underdog that needed my representation. And I was going to, let me give you an example. So someone who came to me and said, oh, I heard you confronted your abuser, right? I want to confront my abuser, and I want him to pay for my therapy, and I want my family to know, and everything else. Like, okay, fine. Like, I'll help you out.
Right.
So who's the guy? What's his number? Call him up, have some conversations, and it's clearly not going anywhere. So the resolution that I received when I was finally able to confront my abuser, they're clearly not going to be getting. No, we got to get him to pay for therapy. This isn't okay. And he lied to my family, and they have to know. Okay, how long do we want to take this on for?
Mm-hmm.
It's important. Important is different than something being the highest value. So do we want to spend the next 3 months on it? And we'll see if we can get this done.
Right.
And we'll give it our best effort. And if not, we'll say, that's it. We're not losing our lives to getting this guy to finally admit the truth of what happened and getting him to pay for everything he did. Like, that's not, we're not sacrificing everything
right.
on that. And this conversation, I don't think I've said it to the person multiple times, but they're several years in. I've bowed out. I put a few months in, wasn't able to get the result I was looking for. And my recommendation was just let's find a different way to get you internally what you're looking for. Meaning I get what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I get what you're looking for. And you'd love if he gave it. Oftentimes when I'm speaking to someone, when I've had these conversations with people who've abused others, one of the arguments I'll make is say, okay, this guy is basically locked in a prison, a cage or something else, or she is locked in a prison, a cage or something else. And you have the key to that. Mm-hmm. Like, you can walk in and apologize, tell them the truth about what happened, make amends for it. You'll end a lot of confusion, and they'll be able to walk out of that, or at least it'll be unlocked, and now it'll be on them to walk out of it.
Right.
But if you don't do that, there is another way out of the prison. It just has to be broken open in some way. So meaning, what we're looking for is not always justice. Would be that the person who did the wrong makes it right. That's justice.
Right.
But the highest value is not always justice. The highest value in this case to me is that this person gets out of the prison that they're in. And we've tried for a few months by doing it through the route of justice, which would also be the easiest way. And now it's clearly not going to be the easiest way anymore. He's not willing to take the key, stick it in the door, and unlock the cage and say, I'm sorry for what I did. I did do those mistakes. Those memories are not fake. Those memories are real. And here are some other things I can add to it. And I've seen those situations, and a person is able to get a lot more peace. That would be justice. Okay, someone else is going to pay for your therapy.
What about when justice is the highest value? Do you then throw yourself into it until said justice is received?
But is justice the highest value? When is it?
I think police brutality.
Towards what end?
I'm saying in that case, is justice, first of all, is justice the highest value? Where if a police officer or officers clearly abuse their power.
How much are you willing to lose for that to happen?
Well, first, your opinion, is justice the highest value in that situation? Someone in authority abusing their power.
So give me the specific situation.
I knew a guy
Yeah.
once, and he got pulled over one night, and he was like kind of unknown. The cops knew him.
Okay.
And earlier he had, like a few weeks, it just so happens that he had a run-in with a police officer. He reported a robbery or whatever. They kind of like brushed it off because he wasn't like the cleanest guy, if you will. He had a record, all that stuff. Fast forward, he gets pulled over. They know who he is. They know him by name. They know his car. Small town business. And they basically tell him, we know you have money. You give us some money, or we'll beat the shit out of you.
Just like in the U.S.?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay.
And he told him, I don't have any money, and he got beat up, right? Really bad. And someone, like he said it to some people that he trusted, and they said, look, you got to go report this. We got to, whatever. He didn't do it because he wasn't necessarily, I guess, an upstanding citizen. But let's say he was. In that case, the cops abuse their power. Like, they're not good people. And they're in the authority where they can do something and abuse.
You're saying all cops?
Am I saying all cops?
Yeah.
I mean, it would apply, yeah. If any cop abuses their power, is justice the highest value in that case? Even specifically with cops. Why not? Or religious figures, for example.
Yeah.
If a rabbi, a priest, clergy abuses their power, is justice the highest value in that situation?
So the example I gave you is not much different, right? You have someone who abused a child, right? That is the situation. And then as the child has become an adult, they want to get justice for it. Is it a very real value? Of course. Of course it's value. As a society, it's an extremely high value. I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about as an individual wanting justice for themselves. And then say, okay, towards what end? Towards what end? So what would justice look like? What would justice look like? So one is saying, like, you need a society where the people in power don't abuse others. That's something that's about as high a value as you can get. Because if you have a society where those in power abuse those underneath them, then we're all effed.
Right.
So, okay, so that's existential,
right,
in some way. Okay, let's take one of these specific situations, right? So this guy you knew who was abused by a particular cop, and he sustained a kind of, I don't know, certain damage or something else, and he maybe physically, and he wants a certain restitution that's going to come back from it. Hey, as a result, I was out of work for 2 months. I suffered this humiliation, this effect, this, that, and the other thing. I want X amount of dollars. Fight for it. Fight for it. But are you going to spend the next 50 years of your life giving up everything in order for that to happen? Or are you going to allow maybe the money to come to you in some other way and say, like,
how much of that is pinned to progress?
What?
How much of that is pinned to progress? Like the progression of the fight. Meaning, like, if you ask me in day one of the fight, at what ends am I willing to go? Am I willing to spend the next 15 years? I don't know. But if I'm fighting and day one and day 21 and I'm seeing progress, like, you're asking me that same question, and it's like, I don't know how long I'm going, but I see progress.
Right. In the macro, this is a really high value, like I mentioned. In this individual situation, is someone willing to suspend the rest of their lives in order to get this wrong righted? I think that oftentimes that's coming from a traumatic response. Fight for it, and then at some point in time, let yourself get the win in a different way. You may never get the win from that person in that way. Maybe, for example, like as an example, let's say this police officer never makes it right with this individual person. But as a result of this story, there's certain things able to be moved forward on a societal level. Then allow that to be justice in some way. If you come into money in some other way, allow that to be justice in some other way. Leave yourself open to other ways of winning.
So let's unpack that for a little bit, because it makes me, and let's get specific, right? Using that same example about police brutality in America, specifically against black people, right? The people that are fighting it, for sure, they're having a traumatic response. It doesn't end though, right? Like the example you just mentioned, right? Where it's like, as a result, things move forward societally. Like in America, it feels like it's not. So,
right. So there, I'd have a hard time agreeing with you. It's definitely moving forward. It's definitely moving forward. I'm not 100% sure. I think there are certain aspects of it that are against black people in some ways, but I think that systemically you have people in power abuse those with less power. Systemically, right? That's everywhere, systemically. And then you have prosecutors abuse their power in a lot of ways. So is this conversation moving forward? Certainly.
How so?
I know about it.
So
ask the average person in America, does this exist, right? And this is not to get into the politics of it.
No, for sure.
Because I think there are some ways that this is used as a political weapon of sorts, that a certain side cares more about this than other side and other stuff. But the concept of it, right, I get. And the profiling and everything else, I get, right? So the question is this: does the average person know about this today more than they did 10 or 15 years ago? For sure.
So awareness is
more than awareness.
Okay.
In an interaction, you know for a fact that interactions every single day, police officers have in their mind that their career can change like this, if they don't act appropriately in situations. It's not to say it still doesn't happen, and it's not this, but it's definitely move forward in a lot of ways.
So that's actually what I was gonna ask you about, because what does it mean? And I have my own opinion, but what does it mean if cops know that they can lose everything like that, and it does still happen?
So you got to look at the numbers. Does it still happen at the numbers that they had before? I don't think so. I can tell you
probably
for myself,
not, right?
One second. I can tell you for myself. So just as someone I got pulled over once by a police officer, and I was excited. I just got this BMW M5, and it was, took about a mile down Ives Dairy Road, Miami, turn onto Biscayne Boulevard. Police officer pulls me over, and he says, I was wearing a yarmulke, and he says, "Do you know when I started following you?" I said, "Sorry." I said, "I just got this car, just excited. It's late at night. I was just, you know, seeing if I can, open it up a little bit." So he said, "Well, I started following you back from when you turned onto Ives Dairy, and you didn't notice me." I goes, "A while I was following you." So I said, "Sorry, right? You're right. Sorry, my mistake." So he peeks down, and he's like, "Oh." He said, and I don't know if he commented on the yarmulke or nodded on it, and he said something to the effect of the car being a German car, and his grandfather being like an SS officer or something, like a Nazi or something. And I was like kind of shocked. And in the moment, like I didn't even, like had I had my wits about me, would have taken a badge number or something, reported it. But instead I said, that may very well be the case, but you're driving the police car, I'm driving the German car.
That's what you said to him.
That's what I said at the time. And it wasn't until afterwards, I think he caught himself what he said, and he didn't give me a ticket. Like I think he seemed to realize, because my friend was much more shocked. And when we pull away, he's like we had that interaction. Like, dude, did he just say that? Did he just tell like a Jewish guy? And like, let's say it was 2010 when the story happened about his grandfather being an SS officer.
Right.
You know, and I thought, like, had I had the badge, like, that would have been pretty easy to prove. Like, what was he in fact?
Right.
Was he in fact of German descent? Like, where'd that information even come from? But that was a pretty brazen statement over there. I don't know that same interaction happens today. I don't know that there's that level of comfort in that interaction to do that same thing. So have things move forward in this, yes. And that's maybe an example of, do you disagree that it's moved forward?
Do I disagree? I think I'm hesitant to say move forward. Maybe evolved feels like a more
You don't
suiting.
think progress has been made on this issue?
On police abusing their authority?
Say it differently. No, it's not about police abusing their authority. On police being able to get away with abusing their authority.
It's hard to say because we only hear about the stuff we hear about. And as a black man in America, I know that to be like intimately true.
Listen, we've experienced it firsthand, right? Because I had remember I had two cars. I had a car and a truck at work, and tags came, and I put the tags for the car on the truck and the tags for the truck on the car.
Yep.
So I had the wrong tag there, and I had it for months like this.
For months.
Literally
Yep.
months. And I
I
was
took
away
you
for
to the
weekend.
airport one day.
Yeah.
Yep.
You took my car, and you came back, and you're like, dude, sorry, I got a DWB. I'm like, what's a DWB? He said, drive and want black.
Right.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So you showed me this ticket. I was like, wow, like this thing has been on there for months.
Right.
The wrong ticket, but you were driving a
black man in a Benz,
Yeah.
Yeah, and even like
so-
that, like he pulled me and he's like, whose car is this? It's the first thing he asked me.
That was a question.
Whose car is this?
Wow.
First thing he asked me. Not, I stopped you, my window rolled down. He said, looked in, he said, whose car is this?
Right.
And,
I got
wanted
that
to-
question once.
You've gotten that question?
I got that question once.
Yeah, so.
But I was driving, remember that big Bentley I was driving for a few months?
Yeah. The Flying Spur?
Yeah. So when I had that, so I don't know, I was like 26 years old or something, and I got
Right.
pulled over. But I think he was expecting me to say my dad. I don't think in your case he was
right.
expecting you to say your dad.
Yeah, and I mean, so like the stuff that we hear about is what makes the news and what gets publicized. But yeah, has it? Yeah, in some ways it has. I'm not even gonna. Yes, progress has been made. The consequence of your actions as a police officer is much more apparent to the police officer, but it's still happening at an unacceptable rate.
Good.
So it's like,
good.
what does that mean?
Right. So you're saying it's good. Now you say, is it the values are values, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is justice a value? Yes. Is it a very high value? Yes. From a societal perspective, it's kind of number one. If you don't have justice, you don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. From a societal perspective.
Right.
On an individual level, for example, if you wanted like this cop who pulled you over and gave you the ticket for driving that guy, like this guy to be shamed in some way, and you took that till the end of the earth, like, dude, chill out. And sometimes people take fights to the end of the earth. And I'm saying, relax. Look at other ways. There's so many other ways you can be winning. So it's easy for me to say in some ways, I talk a lot about my abuse because I got the justice from that guy. But the justice was the justice that I defined. He never paid for my therapy. He couldn't afford to pay for my therapy.
Was that the justice you always wanted going into it, or it kind of developed like, okay?
The justice that I wanted was him to acknowledge it, and he did that. Okay, let's say I never got that from him. Let's say I never got that from him. I would like to sit here and say that it would have been possible to achieve this feeling without it. With work, sure, with work. So meaning justice is something worth pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the highest value, and there are other ways to get it. That's what I'm saying. Meaning I said, okay, this guy is never going to give me what I want. He's never going to. I'm going to have to, if he never gave me what I wanted, okay, if there's an afterworld, when he gets there, justice will be served then. In the meantime, I'm not taking it to the end of the earth. I'm freeing myself from this prison regardless of what happens. That fight for justice, like what you're talking about, some of this, you're coming with certain energy. I think you're demonstrating my point. Some of that is not coming from some of these things inside you being healed and saying, okay, the win is in other ways. There is progress being made. 100% there's progress being made in a ton of ways. And if you can feel like you won without those specific things, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you're okay, you got it. And if the truth is never known about this guy and this wrong is never 100% righted in the way you wanted, there's still another way for you to win. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not going to sit across from you either, though, and act and brush over the fact that I feel like specifically you have intentionally equipped yourself with certain tools. Like, you intentionally went after your own healing. Like, you set priority on that. So it's more plausible for you to recognize the other wins versus someone that their entire life has been traumatic. And then inside of that, like, a grave injustice happens. They can't cope any other way, but
and
like,
that's what
I'm
we gotta
throwing
help with.
myself.
That's what we got to help with. That's the drop a rope, right? Certain people.
Like, I think about gangs, not to cut you.
Yeah.
I think about gang culture. That's what a lot of that is.
Is what?
A traumatic response. Like, you ask some people that are like steep, and I'm not talking about like gangs on guys on TV and all that like romanticize it. I'm talking about like real gangbangers.
Right.
Like, a lot of it stems from these inner neighborhood wars that have been perpetuated over a couple of decades. They don't even know why they're fighting against each other. And
therefore what?
And therefore it keeps going. So how does but they don't that's all they know. They don't have any other tools. They can't see. It's like, let's say, you know what, yeah, we're a gang, but man, we built a community among the 200 of us from this neighborhood. What if we put this energy somewhere else?
Good. What's the central point that I'm making here? That oftentimes this fight for justice is a traumatic response. That's my point.
Agreed.
So bringing up gangs and people who are traumatized for generations and born into that culture doesn't disprove that. The question is how to offer that help. And I think that's often what you talk about is drop a rope, is that some of us, why do we do this? Because some of us have gotten the benefit of getting out a little bit. Like, I couldn't be in this place of healing had I not also had certain business success, which a lot of that was pure luck and pure blessing, you know, just thrown over me, like completely thrown over me. Yeah, I had to work and I had to do certain things, but a lot of it was a situation that I was put in. And okay.
And by the way, when I said you have tools, I wasn't even necessarily thinking about like monetarily.
I know you weren't talking about that, but I'm saying that that's enabled those tools to even be accessed. Otherwise, I'd be working 9 to 7. Right. Today, we're sitting here on a Thursday afternoon having this conversation, and that's a gift that I'm able to do that and take off a couple days a month and have these conversations. And prior to this, I was able to take it off and devote it towards healing in some way. So those people who are given those gifts to go back, and that's what you talk about, drop a rope, and we're helped from other people, and then we go on and help others. Yes, some people are never going to be able to access what we've accessed in the way we've accessed it.
Right.
You got certain gifts, I got certain gifts, enabled you to get out in some way, and then that's what we do. We go back to, hopefully we go back to where we came from, right? Your idol that you always talk about, Nipsey Hussle, that's what he did.
Right.
He made it and stayed.
Right.
Okay, so I didn't stay, but I'm sending a message back out to those to those who are there. I'm not forgetting about them.
And that kind of brings it full circle for me with finding that win, right? Like, you make it out, essentially you try to be that beacon. You try to be an example that people can look to, and hopefully it affects other people. So ultimately it starts with you, right? And yeah, you got to recognize that justice is not always like the highest value, like you said, and however that might come, and maybe it comes from looking at someone else, you know, and then from that you recognize, because even just from proximity with you, that's kind of how I was able to access some of the things I'm able to access.
Right, that's a gift, right?
Like, oh shit, like I remember thinking to myself, like, this guy like works on himself a crazy amount. Like, I've never seen someone so like into like self-improvement. It's nutty almost, right? And then I started doing it. I'm like,
that's why.
It makes sense.
Right, that's why.
It's like, it changes everything.
Yeah, what do you want to invest in?
Work.
You want to invest in real estate?
Right.
You want to invest in stocks? You want to invest in a business? Yes. But main investment number one, in yourself. Woman, that's the place to be. So this is something that I'm connecting to from my own healing path, even though I saw this as a real virtue of mine. And I'm not putting it all the way down in the gutter. I want to be clear. I'm saying it's not number one, where that's where it sat for a long time. I was willing to expend everything for for justice. And it's like, chill out. There's a lot of different ways to get to that place. Don't lose your life. Don't destroy your kids. Don't like that. That's coming from a certain unhealed trauma inside of us that we have to make it right. Chill out.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different ways to win this race. And find the way that's open to you versus being pig-headed.
Just hearing it articulated that way, I don't think I've ever really considered that, and that it's a trauma response. And I agree.
It's all, once we see it as that, I mean, you're not going to, it's saying what it is for what it is. And I'm open to being wrong on this one. I know this is a subtle, nuanced point. If someone has I think when you go into the macro, I think, this is wrong in the highest level. Like, we got to pursue justice at the highest level. And it's kind of value number one in a lot of ways in order for us to have a functioning society. But you don't have to have justice 100% of the time in 100% of situations in order to have overall a just society. And I guess the main point is, can you feel like a winner without winning this one? I found there were times in my life where I was fighting with someone who wasn't nearly in the situation I was in so many ways. Whether it was with family or mental health or just being in a good place financially and otherwise. And I'm feeling like somehow I can lose to them. And it's like, no, come on. Like, I'm okay. I can lose this and it'll be okay. Yeah, it'll be okay. We'll be okay losing this one. Some of them are existential. Going back to this example, this girl who wants justice from the person who you fought for it. You stood up to him. You said what had to be said. You told your family. Like, you didn't back down from the fight. Good on you. You want to keep at it a little bit. That's great. But if somehow, if I said to you, hey, you know what? You seem like a wonderful person, and we're going to help you with your therapy in some way. Accept it. Don't say, I want that guy to. You got what you needed. You're not missing out on anything. Like, you're good. Stop with this guy needs to get it. The world gave it to you in some other way. Take a deep breath. You won. Keep moving forward. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Your fight for justice is, you're responding to some sort of trauma, and that's okay. And you'll be okay.
Amen.